Ma'am, can I have you step aside for a second?
I'm already authorized to be here.
Okay, I just need to verify that. Do you have identification on you?
On the evening of October 14, 2023, a private charity fundraiser was underway inside a secured ballroom at the Hamilton Civic Center in Alexandria, Virginia. The guest list included attorneys, elected officials, and members of the federal judiciary. Entry required prior clearance, identification verification, and confirmation against a pre-approved registry. At approximately 7:42 p.m., a uniformed officer assigned to off-site security detail entered the venue following a report of an unverified individual moving between restricted sections of the event. Within minutes, that individual was approached, questioned, and physically detained in full view of attendees. The individual identified herself as Judge Renee Caldwell, a sitting federal judge with jurisdiction in the Eastern District of Virginia. According to witness statements, she complied with initial questioning and presented identification. Despite this, the officer continued to challenge her presence, requested additional verification, and escalated the encounter. By 7:49 p.m., multiple event organizers intervened, confirming her identity and authority to be present. The situation did not de-escalate immediately. Audio recordings, partial surveillance footage, and witness accounts later documented the exchange. Internal communication logs reveal that dispatch was contacted during the encounter, though no external threat had been confirmed. Within 48 hours, the incident triggered an internal review by the Alexandria Police Department. By the end of the week, the officer involved had been placed on administrative leave. What began as a routine security check inside a controlled environment developed into a case involving unlawful detention, questions of professional conduct, and a civil lawsuit filed in federal court. The sequence of decisions made within a 7-minute window would later define the outcome of the case, and raise broader questions about authority, verification protocols, and institutional accountability. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. I was told this channel wouldn't reach 1,000 subscribers, but stories like this deserve to be heard. Your support helps bring these cases to light and proves that these stories matter. Step aside. I need you to leave this area now. The instruction is delivered in a controlled tone, direct and procedural. The setting is a secured charity fundraiser inside the Hamilton Civic Center in Alexandria, Virginia. Movement within the venue is limited to verified guests. Security presence is active but not visibly intrusive. I am authorized to be here. The response is immediate. Identification is presented. The exchange takes place near a corridor connecting the main ballroom to a restricted seating section reserved for keynote participants. The officer repeats the directive. The wording remains consistent, but the tone becomes more rigid. A second request for compliance is issued without acknowledgement of the credentials already shown. Nearby attendees begin to observe. Conversations in the surrounding area slow as attention shifts toward the interaction. The environment remains controlled, but the focus narrows to a single point of conflict. The identification is visible. It is not accepted. Within moments, the officer initiates detention. That decision, made in real time despite available verification, becomes the central point where authority overrides confirmed identity. Every action that follows traces back to this sequence. The incident occurs during a controlled access charity event attended by members of the legal community, government officials, and invited guests with prior clearance. Entry into the venue requires identity verification against a pre-approved registry managed by event security personnel. Judge Renee Caldwell enters the venue at approximately 7:35 p.m. Her credentials are confirmed at check-in. Her name appears on the official guest list under the category of keynote participants. She proceeds into the main event space without restriction. The environment is structured to minimize unauthorized access. Security responsibilities are divided between private event coordinators and uniformed officers assigned to external and internal oversight. Officer Daniel Mercer is assigned to the event as part of a standard security deployment. His role includes monitoring movement within the venue and responding to any reported irregularities. His authority allows him to question individuals and enforce access restrictions if necessary. At 7:42 p.m., Mercer receives information regarding unverified movement within a restricted section. The report does not specify a threat. It indicates only that an individual may have entered an area without proper confirmation. This moment establishes the starting point of the escalation. At 7:43 p.m., Mercer approaches Judge Caldwell near the transition corridor between sections. The approach is direct and procedural. He requests identification and asks her to confirm her authorization to be in the area. Judge Caldwell provides identification. The documentation matches the event registry. At this stage, protocol requires verification through event coordination or cross-checking with the access list. Both options are available within the environment. Instead of initiating verification through those channels, Mercer continues questioning. The interaction shifts from confirmation to challenge. At 7:45 p.m., the identification is presented again. The officer does not accept it as sufficient proof of authorization. No external confirmation is requested at this stage. This marks the first critical deviation from protocol. At 7:46 p.m., the tone of the interaction changes. The officer issues a directive for Judge Caldwell to leave the restricted area. The instruction is repeated without acknowledgement of the verified credentials already presented. The situation begins to draw attention from nearby attendees. Individuals within the legal community observe the exchange. Some recognize Judge Caldwell and begin to monitor the interaction more closely. At this point, the available information includes verified entry at check-in, valid identification presented, no confirmed security threat. Despite this, Mercer escalates the situation. At 7:47 p.m., physical detention is initiated. The action occurs in full view of attendees. The justification for detention is based on perceived non-compliance rather than confirmed unauthorized access. This is the second major deviation from protocol. At 7:48 p.m., event staff begin to intervene. Lena Brooks, the event security coordinator, approaches the scene. She has direct access to the guest registry and authority over event verification processes. She confirms that Judge Caldwell is an authorized attendee. Additional witnesses, including legal professionals present at the event, verbally confirm her identity and status. This introduces new information into the situation, information that directly contradicts the basis for detention. At this stage, protocol requires immediate reassessment. The officer pauses but does not disengage immediately. Radio communication is initiated. Mercer contacts dispatch, reporting a possible unauthorized individual and requesting confirmation. Dispatch responds that there is no active threat associated with the event. Despite this, the detention is not immediately terminated. This delay represents a third deviation from expected procedure. At 7:49 p.m., multiple confirmations are in place. Event coordinator verification. Witness identification. Dispatch confirmation of no threat. The factual basis for detention no longer exists. At 7:50 p.m., the officer delays release. The interaction continues briefly despite the available confirmations. At 7:52 p.m., the situation is resolved. Judge Caldwell is released from detention. No charges are filed. No further enforcement action is taken at the scene. The entire sequence, from initial contact to resolution, lasts approximately 9 minutes. Within that time, multiple decision points altered the trajectory of the case. Judge Renee Caldwell holds a federal judicial position within the Eastern District of Virginia. Her professional background includes years of legal practice and confirmed judicial appointment. Her authority is institutional and recognized within legal frameworks, but situationally dependent on identification and recognition in public environments. At the event, her role is that of an invited participant. During the incident, her position shifts to that of a detained individual. Following the event, her role transitions into that of a plaintiff in a civil legal action. Officer Daniel Mercer has an 8-year service record within the department. His experience includes patrol assignments and crowd control operations. At the event, he holds immediate situational authority, allowing him to question and detain individuals based on perceived security concerns. During the incident, his role transitions from enforcement to subject of investigation. Following internal review, his employment status changes. Lena Brooks, as the event security coordinator, holds operational authority over access verification. Her role becomes critical during the intervention phase, as she provides confirmation that contradicts the officer's assessment. Supervisors are not present during the initial incident. Their involvement begins after the event, during internal review processes. Following the incident, an internal review examines Officer Mercer's prior record. The findings include 2 prior complaints involving excessive questioning of individuals who had already been verified. 1 documented warning related to escalation without supervisor approval. Each of these incidents was handled individually. No cumulative action was taken to address a broader pattern. When viewed collectively, a consistent behavior emerges. Reliance on personal judgment over established verification protocols. Escalation in situations involving ambiguity. Limited engagement with available verification systems. These patterns suggest missed opportunities for intervention. Key missed intervention points include: after the second documented complaint, during assignment briefing for the event, during the incident, where supervisor input was not immediately requested. The absence of corrective measures allowed the pattern to continue. The incident exposes several systemic vulnerabilities within controlled security environments. First, the breakdown in verification protocols. The event had a functioning system for confirming identity. That system was not utilized effectively during the incident. Second, the reliance on individual discretion. While discretion is necessary in security roles, it must operate within defined procedural limits. In this case, discretion overrode available verification. Third, the lack of real-time accountability. Supervisors were not present during the escalation. No immediate oversight mechanism corrected the course of action. Fourth, the emergence of racial profiling allegations. The detention of a black federal judge in a professional setting raises questions about how suspicion is assigned and acted upon. These issues extend beyond the individuals involved and point toward institutional gaps. Within 48 hours of the incident, the Alexandria Police Department initiates an internal review. Officer Mercer is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Public statements describe the incident as a procedural failure. No immediate admission of misconduct is made. Internally, the review identifies deviations from protocol at multiple stages. Failure to verify identity through available systems. Escalation without sufficient cause. Delay in releasing the detained individual after confirmation. These findings differ in specificity from the public narrative. The distinction between internal conclusions and public communication highlights a gap in institutional transparency. Following the incident, a civil lawsuit is filed in federal court. The claim focuses on unlawful detention and violation of civil rights. The legal process introduces additional scrutiny. Review of body camera footage. Analysis of dispatch communications. Examination of internal reports. Officer Mercer's employment is terminated following the conclusion of the internal investigation. Policy changes are implemented within the department, including revised identity verification procedures, mandatory de-escalation training, reinforcement of supervisor involvement in ambiguous situations. These changes are presented as corrective measures. The event was structured as a controlled access charity function held inside a secured municipal venue. Entry required pre-registration, identity verification, and confirmation against a digital guest list maintained by event coordinators. Attendees included members of the legal community, public officials, and invited guests with verified credentials. Upon arrival, each guest passed through a multi-step verification process. Identification was checked against a pre-approved registry. Names were logged digitally, and entry timestamps were recorded. Security personnel were positioned both at the entrance and inside the venue to monitor movement between designated areas. Judge Renee Caldwell arrived during the early phase of the event. Her name appeared on the approved guest list. Entry logs confirmed that her identification was verified at check-in. The system recorded her presence as authorized, with no flags or irregularities noted at the time of entry. The security structure relied on coordination between event staff and assigned law enforcement personnel. Event coordinators controlled the guest list and verification system, while officers were responsible for responding to perceived disruptions or unauthorized access. This division required clear communication protocols to ensure that identity confirmations could be quickly validated if questioned. At this stage, all systems functioned as intended. The environment remained stable, with no reported threats or security concerns. At approximately 7:42 p.m., a report was communicated to an officer assigned to interior security. The report described an unverified individual moving between restricted sections of the venue. The source of the report was not formally documented at the moment it was received. The officer initiated movement toward the reported location. No cross-check was performed with event coordinators before the approach. No confirmation request was submitted through the established guest verification system at that time. This moment marked the beginning of independent decision-making outside the coordinated verification process. The officer approached Judge Caldwell and initiated questioning regarding her presence at the event. According to later documentation, she responded by identifying herself and presenting credentials. The presented identification aligned with the information stored in the event's entry logs. However, the officer did not verify this information against the event's digital registry at that moment. Bodycam audio later confirmed that the officer continued to question her authorization despite the presentation of identification. The interaction progressed through repeated requests for additional verification. Surveillance footage captured portions of the exchange. The footage showed the officer maintaining a controlled but assertive posture while restricting the subject's movement within the space. At this stage, the interaction had not yet been resolved through available verification systems. The officer continued to rely on personal assessment rather than coordinated confirmation. The situation progressed into a direct conflict between documented identity and situational enforcement authority. Judge Caldwell's credentials had already been verified at entry and recorded in the system. However, that verification was not accessed or referenced during the encounter. Instead, the officer continued to challenge her presence based on the initial report. Dispatch logs later confirmed that the officer made contact with communication channels during the interaction. The logs indicated that no active threat had been reported within the venue at that time. Despite this, the officer escalated the interaction further. Bodycam audio documented commands issued for compliance, including directives to step aside and remain in place. The failure to reconcile verified identity with enforcement action marked a critical divergence from established protocol. Event organizers began to intervene after observing the interaction. Multiple individuals approached the officer and provided verbal confirmation of Judge Caldwell's identity and authorization to be present. Witness accounts from legal professionals present at the event supported these statements. Several individuals reported that they identified her by name and position and communicated this directly to the officer. Despite these interventions, the officer did not immediately disengage. Surveillance footage showed a delay between external confirmation and the cessation of enforcement actions. This delay extended the duration of the detention beyond the point at which identity had been independently verified by multiple sources. The interaction concluded after approximately 7 minutes. Judge Caldwell was released without charges or further action. Immediately following the incident, internal reporting procedures were initiated. Event organizers documented the sequence of events and submitted statements. Law enforcement personnel involved were required to file incident reports. Evidence collection began within hours. This included securing bodycam audio, retrieving surveillance footage, and preserving dispatch communication logs. The entry verification system was also reviewed. Logs confirmed that Judge Caldwell's credentials had been properly verified upon entry and recorded without issue. At this stage, the case transitioned from a live incident to a documented event subject to review. The internal investigation focused on reconstructing the sequence of decisions made during the incident. Entry logs served as the primary form of physical verification. These logs confirmed that Judge Caldwell had been cleared through all required checkpoints before entering the venue. Surveillance footage provided visual confirmation of the interaction. While not capturing the full exchange, it documented positioning, movement restriction, and the presence of intervening individuals. Bodycam audio served as the most detailed record of the interaction. It captured the verbal exchange, commands issued, and the progression of the officer's decision-making. Dispatch logs confirmed that no active threat had been reported and that no directive had been issued requiring detention. Event organizers confirmed that the judge had been properly vetted prior to entry. Legal professionals present provided consistent accounts regarding identity confirmation during the incident. Internal police reports documented the officer's account of the incident. Administrative review findings later compared this account with available evidence. The investigation also included a review of the officer's prior conduct. Records indicated previous incidents involving escalation during routine interactions. These incidents had resulted in warnings but not significant disciplinary action. When analyzed collectively, these records suggested a pattern of decision-making that prioritized personal assessment over procedural verification. Within 48 hours of the incident, the officer was placed on administrative leave. This action was taken pending the outcome of an internal affairs investigation. The department issued a public statement acknowledging a procedural failure during the event. The statement referenced a breakdown in communication but did not identify specific violations at that time. Internally, the investigation findings identified clear deviations from established protocol. These included failure to verify identity through available systems and continuation of enforcement actions after confirmation was provided. A discrepancy emerged between public framing and internal conclusions. Public communication described the incident as a miscommunication, while internal findings categorized it as a protocol violation. The internal affairs investigation proceeded with a review of all available evidence, including digital records, witness statements, and prior conduct history. Following the conclusion of the initial investigation phase, a civil lawsuit was filed in